So President Trump has taken a drastic step in order to hide the full Mueller report. Now, as of Wednesday, President Trump has decided to exert executive privilege, or to assert executive privilege. Now, this is according to another New York Times report. And they said that it was an effort to shield hidden portions of Robert Mueller's unredacted report and the evidence he collected from Congress. Now, the assertion, they said, Mr. Trump's first use of secrecy powers as president came as the House Judiciary Committee was expected to vote on Wednesday to recommend the House of Representatives hold Attorney General William Barr in contempt of Congress for defying a subpoena for that same material. So now that's interesting. So Congress asked for this information, right? And they're able to do that. They were able to subpoena the Department of Justice. William Barr said, no, I'm not going to give it to you. Well, because William Barr, of course, is there to protect Donald Trump. And so what the recourse was for the House is, okay, well, until you give us that material, we will hold you in contempt. Now, interestingly enough, the House has also ran into problems with Trump's full tax returns with Mick Mulvaney. The House also said, okay, we want Donald Trump's taxes. Mulvaney said, absolutely not. I'm not going to give them over. And so he faces the possibility of also being held in contempt. So now, the whole point of course, this is to have checks and balances in the government, right? Being able to hold the Attorney General in contempt for not producing what they consider to be relevant data, right? Now, Trump, of course, doesn't care, and he says, well, I'm just going to try to hide the report, as much of the report, or delay as much as I can, by using my executive privilege, which, of course, there is a reason for executive privilege, and I'll get into that in a minute. Now, what's funny is that he's doing that for a report that he originally said completely exonerated him from anything. That includes obstruction of justice, as well as criminal conspiracy. Now, look, I've never believed in the criminal conspiracy known as Russiagate, but I do know that there was obstruction of justice. You don't have to be a lawyer to look at that, to see that. Now, a Justice Department official, Stephen Boyd, wrote this to Congress, and it said, this is to advise you that the president has asserted executive privilege over the entirety of the subpoenaed materials. Now, those materials, as I said before, reference the Mueller report, but also that underlying evidence that House Democrats were seeking to basically make an obstruction case and to see whether or not they should be able to impeach. Now, what's curious about this, right, is that it looks like they're trying to hide evidence of obstruction of justice. And again, he's not only trying to hide the report, the unredacted report, but also the evidence that would back up the findings of that report. This to me seems like a cover-up. I mean, am I wrong? Is this not a cover-up? If so, then what is a cover-up? Right? Words have lost meaning if this isn't. But anyway, now, this whole thing started, I believe, yesterday, last night, when the administration had threatened to use their executive privilege to prevent Barr from bringing those materials to Congress. Representative Jerry Nadler of New York, the committee chairman for the House Judiciary Committee, to which Barr was actually supposed to or going to present these materials to, said this, quote, "In the coming days, I expect the Congress will have no choice but to confront the behavior of this lawless administration. The committee would also take a hard look at the officials who are enabling this cover-up." Now, the thing is, executive privilege is a delaying tactic, right? Now, it generally refers to advice to the president by his lawyers. So now, in this report, if he got advice from, for example, some of his lawyers, former lawyer Don McGahn, or somebody like, I don't know, Rudy Giuliani, right? That advice, he could go back and say, hey, wait a minute, that's advice my lawyer got me. That's executive privilege. You need to redact that. Make sure that nobody sees that, because that's advice I got from my lawyer. Oh, that's fair. That's what executive privilege is supposed to be about. That's fine. That's fine. But see, what makes me think it's probably more than that. I really desperately do not want Congress to see this report. I just don't. And so it is a delay tactic. And unfortunately, it's part of the White House strategy of basically, I don't know what they're trying to do. Run out the clock. I don't get what this achieves in the long term. But I do have a couple of ideas. I mean, for one, you delay, right? While you're delaying, you lay the groundwork for having this dismissed as nothing more than Democrats playing politics. And of course, that leads to statements like Sarah Huckabee Sanders, who came out earlier today, and she said, the American people see through Chairman Nadler's desperate ploy to distract from the president's historically successful agenda, really, and booming economy, which was left over from the Obama administration, and also, as I've talked about before, you have slow wage growth, that's barely keeping up with inflation. You have a lot of factories that have actually closed down, despite having their massive tax cuts. You have massive deficits and national debt that continues to increase. So I wouldn't say booming economy. I'm saying sugar high economy, which will eventually, I think, crash. But anyway, she continues with her statement. Neither the White House nor Attorney General Barr will comply with Chairman Nadler's unlawful and reckless demands. No, what's unlawful is the Attorney General saying, I'm just not going to appear before a subpoena from the House. Just not going to do it. I don't feel like it. I don't really want to show up. And that's why he was going to be held in contempt. Now, it's not going to happen, as the president has asserted his executive privilege. Now, she also said, faced with Chairman Nadler's blatant abuse of power, projection, and at the Attorney General's request, the president has no other option than to make a protective assertion of executive privilege. Now, what are they protecting? What are they protecting? I'm kind of curious. But again, here's the framing, right? Oh, look at poor Trump. He is the victim of the vicious and cruel Democrats. Wait a minute. Now, I have a lot of words for Democrats, especially for House Democrats, Congressional Democrats, like, for example, look, even Jerry Nadler, but more along the lines of people like Nancy Pelosi, right? One of those words would not be vicious. I guess maybe if you look at how she treats progressives. But look, generally the Democrats are fairly weak. But when it comes to this and their powers of basically getting subpoenas and trying to get information from the and doing investigations of the president, surprisingly, they're actually kind of strong. But nonetheless, right? Let's talk about distraction, actually. Today we find out that the grifter-in-chief has left $1 billion of not his own money on his failed business ventures. So I guess if you want to distract from something, maybe it's to distract from the embarrassment that you're not actually a billionaire. I don't know. Or maybe something else that you might want to distract from is the fact that the Mueller testimony is going to happen tentatively next week. So I don't know. Which, by the way, the Mueller testimony will not be impacted by this. I'm just saying. So I think this is a incredibly desperate move from an incredibly desperate administration and an unhinged president. It's not going to go far. It's not going to go well because I think after they, I guess, get rid of whatever in that document, which could be considered privileged information, they're going to have to present it to Congress. And so we'll see what happens when that happens. Hey guys, hopefully you enjoyed that free video. Now I'm going to have to ask you a favor. Between the demonetization and the YouTube algorithm messing around with view counts, etc., we're having a hard time adjusting to the new YouTube reality, which is where you guys come in. See, we have a Patreon, patreon.com/TYTNation, set up to help us rely on you guys, the viewers, instead of big corporate ads. Look, you know the show. You know I'm not in favor of big corporations anyway. So help us transition away from relying on the ad model to pay the bills and sign up to be a patron, patreon.com/TYTNation. That goes a long way to help us keep the lights on. and you guys will know that you're supporting independent progressive media.